Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from around the world. I want to thank you for taking some time to join us for the Platform Fundamentals Academy, part of the Live on ServiceNow webinar series. As we get started through this today, we're going to be focusing in on what upgrades are available or how we do our best upgrades in Washington and some of the tools we have available for us. Through this, as we talk about, we may talk about some forward-looking statements and what's coming in Xanadu and Yokohama. If those drop in, we're going to be focusing on Washington, but if I know Govind and I know me, we're going to say some stuff about what we're working on and some of the exciting stuff. Please note that don't make any buying decisions based off of forward-looking statements. Just focus in on what we have released today. This is part of the Live on ServiceNow series of webinars that come through. Lots of great information out there in the platform. We have several academies, and towards the end, we'll throw those all up for you, what's available. But if you take this QR code, you can see everything that's out there. You found this today, you get those invites. But again, lots of great content for you live and then as well as on demand. A few housekeeping items as we get started. One, please use the Q&A. If you want to chat and say that something is great or if your audio is not coming through clearly, go ahead and use the chat for that. But if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. We take those off. We'll answer those. We'll try to get those posted in the community. Make sure it helps us ensure that we answer all of your questions. So please use that Q&A button. We are recording this session to come through. That's why you're on mute right now. As we get into the Q&A, if we have a follow-up, maybe we'll be able to unmute you. But we are recording this. If you would like to not come off of mute, or you have any issues with being recorded, you can go ahead and drop now. And then after this event, we will have a short survey. Let us know how we're doing, how we can make this more useful for you. With that, I want to introduce our featured speaker, product manager on upgrades. All exciting, something we all have to do. Govind Menon. I'm still working on that. Govind, you're the only Govind I know, so I like to Govind. He focuses in on upgrades, and we invited him to give us to talk about what we can do in Washington to make our upgrades better. And we're all here to answer questions for you. My name is Adam Stout. I'm a product manager, outbound product manager covering fundamentals. We have a few other of our outbound product managers here to answer questions, so please go ahead and throw those in the Q&A. If there's something relevant to what we're talking about right now, I'm going to interrupt Govind. I do that all the time, and I will continue to do that to answer those questions live. If not, when we wrap up, we'll just try to answer everything we can at the end, and then we'll post other answers in the community. So please, we want this to be as interactive as possible. Use those Q&A, push us. Let's make sure that we get the most value for you in this time. With that, I want to turn it over to Govind. And let him take it away.
Sounds great. Thank you, Adam. Give me 1 second to take over the screen sharing. And I'll go full screen. Wonderful, wonderful. So I do want to first stress what Adam was saying there at the beginning. I want this to be as interactive as possible. As many of you know, upgrades is something we all must do, but it's rarely something that people actively focus on more so than when they're actually going through the upgrade process. So my takeaway from this session is this is my 24/7 job. I really want you to be as invested in upgrades as I'm invested in upgrades, because this is something that I strongly believe that if we make big investments from a ServiceNow standpoint in this area, we can make lives across the board so much better for all of you. And that's only made possible by me best understanding what are the pain points that each person here on this call and anybody who might watch this recording back later are most dealing with. And then we can try to transition our strategy for Xanadu, Yokohama, Zurich, anything beyond that as well, to best be fitting your needs, such that upgrades are no longer something you're worrying about and planning for months and months about. Instead, it's an easy click of a button and you don't even worry about it beyond that. So in that vein, I really want to stress, beginning with this slide, my email at the bottom here, govind.menon@servicenow.com. I would love to speak with as many of you as possible to really understand your unique upgrade challenges. I think that upgrades is something that is oftentimes talked about in kind of a blanket sense, but we all know that we're all dealing with our own customizations and our own personal problems that are making upgrades as difficult as they are. So please reach out and let me know when you are free, because I'd love to speak with as many of you as possible individually for anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, if you're willing to give me your time. So thank you so much. And with that, Want to go again into the safe harbor agreement. A lot of what we're going to be discussing here is Washington related, but I am also knee deep in the Xanadu planning and the Yokohama planning. So I'm sure I'm going to slip up and give a little bit of that juicy goodness that's upcoming as well. And I want you to hold me honest as well. If that's all stuff that you're hearing about and you don't find all too interesting, maybe we can reorient ourselves accordingly too. And Adam, I see you in the chat already emailing me. Thank you so much. I want as many emails as possible. So with that, I just want to start by talking through exactly what are the team objectives for my team here on Upgrade. So I lead a lot of the upgrade development processes, and with me are a lot of amazing engineers who really know their stuff. And together, we're collectively trying to reduce the cost to upgrade. Now, what does that actually mean to reduce the cost to upgrade? Here on the upgrades team, we break it down into 3 further buckets. The first is the actual time it takes to upgrade. This is primarily speaking to the a lot of the planning and analysis that's going into actually making sure that the upgrade goes on without a hitch. Secondarily, we realize that there's high resource costs when it comes time to upgrade as well. May that be from a actual processing standpoint, making sure that you have machines ready that can take on the upgrade. But then thereafter, also from a people standpoint, we understand that upgrades sometimes go wrong, and you need to have people there in order to make sure that your customizations aren't breaking and that things are able to proceed as expected once you're on the new release. Finally, we also understand that here at ServiceNow, we pride ourselves on ideally having 0 downtime. But we know that during time of upgrade, certain jobs are indeed going to be paused. And we want to be making sure that that quote unquote downtime, if you will, is as minimized as possible. So in that vein, we break it down even further. When we think of time to upgrade, we want upgrades to be as fast as possible, but we also want upgrades to be as early in the process of the upgrade lifecycle as well. Why is that the case? We want our best and brightest innovation to be in the hands of you all the quicker. And hopefully when you believe that an upgrade's as easy to do as we hope for them to be, then you'll be able to get a lot of our newest innovation even quicker. In addition to that, when you are pursuing an upgrade more frequently, you're also going to result in the upgrade usually being faster too. And you can think about that in really simple terms, right? When I'm trying to take on more data, as would be the case if I'm skipping 2 releases, then the upgrade is just going to take longer because I have more files that I'm downloading because more things have been changed between those releases. So if you're upgrading more frequently, you're also more likely to have less slow upgrades and upgrades that are less likely to break as well, because the changes between releases are going to be a lot less than the changes between 2 releases or 3 releases at a time. In the vein of resource cost, we understand that resource cost takes the form of many different things. It's a cost that comes with planning when you're actually reading through all the release notes and you're trying to determine whether or not the upgrade's worth pursuing. It's a time that the devs on your team are spending fixing skipped records and issues with the customizations. It's the time that your QA teams are going through and making sure that things aren't broken. And finally, it's the time that you're using your update sets, your upgrade plans, or what other migration tooling you might have in place to make sure that you can port things over from release to release. So a lot of different things to be worried about from the resource costs standpoint. And we also want to make sure that we're not only worrying about the wall clock time, instead, we're also trying to make it as smooth and easy as possible to pursue an upgrade, such that you're not having to employ a team of 10 to 20 people to do an upgrade. Instead, this is something you can do on your own. And then finally, the idea of downtime. Like we said before, there is a little bit of time during the upgrade where certain jobs are paused. And we know that that's going to have downstream effects for all of your own end users. And ideally, we want to be making sure that that time is as little as possible so that you can get all the best and brightest parts of the ServiceNow experience at all times. So that's how we think through upgrades, at least on my team. And we're trying to decrease the load associated with each of those different buckets that we just walked through there. But then when you think about upgrades from a ServiceNow and customer standpoint, this is how we think about them. From a ServiceNow standpoint, it makes a lot of sense for us to try and get you to upgrade as quickly as possible. It's easier for us to support fewer releases, so we want everybody on the newest release. We also think that everybody should be hopefully trying to use the best stuff that we're putting out there. And ideally, by upgrading, you're accessing that. So we want to make upgrades as smooth as possible, and we have a vested interest in that because we want you having all the cool stuff that every other team here at ServiceNow is trying to create. From a customer benefit standpoint, I think we talked through this a little bit on the last slide, but we really want you to be able to take advantage of our best and brightest. May those be our modern feature sets in the Washington release or anything prior as well. We also realize that we are best at supporting our newest releases too. So we want you to have access to ServiceNow support. But I think the most interesting part of this is that the latest security patches are something that a lot of our customers want. And those are always going to be accessible when you upgrade. So hopefully, if you want the best security experience, you also want to be upgrading as often as possible. So this is the first part where I want this to be as interactive as possible, because when I think through the upgrade journey, this is what I think through. You start with the learning phase where you're trying to figure out everything that's new in the upcoming release. Then you go into the analysis phase to figure out, hey, is everything that's new worth my time, right? We ideally hope that it always is, but we know that there's a huge time sink associated with upgrades, and we want to make sure that you understand it's worth upgrading. But sometimes people in the analysis phase realize, hey, maybe we'll skip a release because everything that's coming in this release isn't worth the hassle associated with upgrading. We then, hopefully, people will decide, yeah, no, I'd rather pursue the upgrade nonetheless. And you go into the planning phase to figure out when should all of our teams pause their development work and we're ready to pursue the upgrade. After that, we then go into the different sub-prod phases. So you're going to be cloning prod to your sub-prod. You're going to be performing smoke testing. You're going to be validating your customizations to making sure that they're not going to be broken. And then finally, once we go into more of the testing phases, we're doing the same testing on prod too. We want to be making sure that nothing's breaking once we port everything over to prod. Finally is the all the stuff that happens at the end of the production upgrade. You're going to be emailing your users about changes. You're going to be performing end user testing as well. We ideally want to make sure that everything that you're uptaking in the Washington release is going to be as easy and intuitive to use as possible too. So this is where I want everybody to ideally provide their input in the chat or raise your hand. These are the markers I have around how long these areas are traditionally taking our customers. Most of the time is spent on that 61-day process that is learning, analysis, and planning. Then there's 42 days or so along the lines of the sub-prods and the testing. And then finally, you're looking at about 3.5 hours or so for the actual upgrade itself. Now, of course, these are averages. They're by no means going to be the case for every customer. We have some customers where this might be double the time. We have some customers where it likely is a fourth of the time. But I want everyone here on this call to hold me honest. If these are in line with what you expect, or at least the ratios are in line with what you expect, that'd be a huge help to me to best understand exactly what are the areas we should be caring about most. And even if it is, say, for example, only 3.5 hours for the production upgrade itself, but that's the point in time that is the most important to you, you don't care as much about the 3-month process at the beginning, let me know about that. Because then we can make sure that the investments we're making in Zandu and Yokohama are in line with what your needs are. So I'm just going to take a moment to read through the chat here and talk aloud as I do so. So we're seeing 6 weeks, 6 to 7 weeks. I'm assuming that everyone here is saying that this is the time it takes from beginning to end of the upgrade, or when we're talking about 6 weeks, are we saying that this is just the learning, analysis, and planning phase? Okay, whole intent. Thank you, Wayne. Oh, 1 week upgrade from Mark. That's wonderful. Okay. Okay, we're looking at 8 weeks from Jackie. 61 days looks to be about right for Eric. So yeah, we're seeing that it's a little bit different depending on the size of the company, but at the very least, it seems like these ratios are more in line with what most people in the chat seem to expect, which is good from our end. So then I'll take a step back, and if there was one area of this upgrade journey that you think is most important to be trying to bring down in terms of time, which area is it? Is it just the time that's being taken so long for the learning, analysis, and planning? Or is it something towards the end of that life cycle, which is even more important because it's impacting your end users more? Okay, testing in all caps. We have learning from Jenny, testing, learning, lot of learning. Okay. Testing and regression, QA testing. Okay, so it seems like the two buckets right here is like learning and analysis is a lot of people are calling out, and then testing. So that's amazing to hear, because At least in my mind, that's very much in line with what I've heard previously as well. I think that a lot of the tooling we're going to have, especially in X, is going to be very associated with the a lot of the issues that people are having in the vein of testing. The learning and analysis phase is a lot more interesting for us to tackle, because the issue there is we have customized release notes. We hope that everybody here is making use of them, but trying to figure out a way in which we can have it be as smooth of a process and as customized of a process as well about learning about the new features has been a challenge that we've always ran into. Because what's interesting in one family release for one customer might be extremely different for another customer. And having you pour through the entirety of the release notes every time isn't all the most like helpful for everyone, because there's a lot of stuff there that might not be really, really targeted towards your own use cases, which we'd still love for you to know. But we want to make it as impactful and bespoke as possible as well. Okay. I love everything on the chat here. We'll save the chat as well, and I'll go through it afterwards. I once again implore everybody on the call to ideally send me an email. And I'd love to work through each of the times that each of these areas are taking for your own use case as well. Okay, cool. So from that, this is another area where I'd love a little bit of audience feedback. From my prior conversations, these are the three things that it seems that customers are wanting the most. Customers want speed, so actually quick upgrades. Second, control over what parts of the upgrade you're taking up. And then finally, guidance. How do I even pursue the upgrade, and what are the steps I need to be taking to actually pursue a successful upgrade without breaking my own customizations? So when we break that down even further, from a speed standpoint, we're talking about the planning that we just talked about in the last slide. We're talking about the testing that we also just talked about in the last slide. But then finally, this seems to be the case most so for our largest customers, less so for our mid to smaller customers as well. But that engine time of that 3.5 hours, that downtime can really affect the end user. So we ideally want that engine time to be as short as possible as well, so that we have ideally no time where jobs are paused. From a control standpoint, what software is upgraded, which is much of the reason why many of our customers seem to be skipping some releases. They don't find inherent value in each part of the family release, and they understand that testing every part of the family release is going to be a little bit of a hassle. So let's push it down the line and ideally find a family release which is really impactful for us. We would love for everybody to take up every family release. So we want to make sure that each part of the family release is as powerful and as impactful as possible. And we're also right now exploring ideas to see if we can break up the family release to be in a way that you can pick and choose which parts of the family release you'd like to take up. Control over when the software is upgraded. As we saw in the chat previously, there's a lot of people who have very stringent planning cycles. So you want to make sure that you're not disrupting any of your development work at the same time too. And then finally, how app upgrades are completed. So I've heard this less so on this call right now from the chat, but in previous conversations too, that it's a little bit finicky trying to work through true ups and trying to figure out that when you're doing app upgrades on the store as well, having to do those manually isn't always the best. So if there's a way to bulk upgrade or something along those lines is something we can explore as well. Finally, in the vein of customer guidance too, we want to make sure that the new products have very clear guidance processes as to how to use them. I don't know how many people here on this call have made use of our upgrade plans. I think they're an amazing deployment tool, but many people need to be on the app repo model to be able to leverage upgrade plans. Now, the issue there is we don't know if we were as clear as possible in our messaging around that. As such, we've had some issues with upgrade plans previously. We understand that and we're iterating upon that, and we hope that we can pursue even better stuff in the upgrade plans domain in the future. But right now, we're transitioning towards trying to tackle those needs in the testing and learning phases instead. As far as customization management is concerned, we know that customizations often break at time of upgrade. We want to make sure that those breaks are as limited as possible. And looking forward towards the Washington release, we actually think that we're going to be doing a very good step in that direction. Then finally, the delegation piece. One thing I've been told by many customers is that it's very complex to do an upgrade, and trying to put that in the hands of a new admin is a little bit fearsome, because if something breaks down the line and that new admin doesn't know what they were doing, then your entire upgrade goes kaput, and that's a lot of lost revenue for your own company. So ideally, we want to be making a way that we can onboard admins easier towards the upgrades journey, and in addition to that, delegate processes as well. So I'm going to take a moment to read through the chat, see if that's in line with what everybody here today thinks. And then after that, we can try to dive a little bit more deeply into what to expect in Washington. So app upgrades are a new challenge, looking for a new strategy for quarterly release of store apps as we brand them as express upgrades. Interesting. I think I'll follow up with you there, Blaze, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
I like that express upgrades. That's a great way of looking at it.
Totally. I typically try to get information from a YouTube video to get a good impression of the contents of release. Herbert, is that a YouTube video that ServiceNow is presenting, or is that something that external customer is doing and you're just trying to learn a little bit more about what worked for them? Okay. Also in the middle of an upgrade, we don't have time for the learning curve. Waiting. Oh, thank you, Ian. I appreciate the compliments about the presentation. Mary Wood. When in the middle of an upgrade, we don't have time for the learning curve, waiting on ServiceNow to respond for cases for help with the tool. Yeah, that makes sense. Which, Mary, that's ideally why we're trying to hope that everything we ship in the future is going to be as clean from a code quality perspective as possible. And we're making strides towards that in our Washington release. So we'll share a little bit more about that in the future. But I fully understand when you're at time of upgrade, the last thing you want to be doing is on ServiceNow support. Instead, you just want to get through the upgrade and move on with your day. And yeah, Blaze, I also see you having a comment about upgrade plans. Happy to talk to you about that one-on-one as well. I think our release with upgrade plans, there's a lot of promise there as far as the deployment tool. We've had some customers really, really loving them, but then some other customers where I don't think it was extremely clear for everyone exactly how they would work. So as a result of that, we want to make that a little bit more clear in the future too. Okay, cool. Seems like a lot of the questions have been answered. So let's dive a little bit more into what to expect. So this is a little bit of a forward-looking timeline. Once again, safe harbor. So please don't make any purchasing decisions based off this. But we try to break down everything towards what are we doing in the pre-upgrade journey, during upgrade, post-upgrade, and then things that might hit on multiple parts of the upgrade journey as well. So in Vancouver, we released the skipped record rules engine. I hope everyone here is at least making use of that in some capacity. But generally speaking, I'll give a quick overview of what that is. The skipped record rules engine allows you to create bulk rules, similar to maybe let's take Outlook, for example, or Gmail. When you can create rules in your email, and then you can apply those rules into any incoming email that you have, right? So maybe you can sort certain things to spam if it has a certain type of messaging in the contents of the email itself, or there's certain things you want to be putting into your priority inbox based off the way that the email is sent, if it's from a certain type of email address or something along those lines. We have a similar sort of logic here for the skipped record rules engine. Basically, you can create record rules, which will then allow you to auto resolve certain rules, which I think, or certain records rather, which I think is really, really important because many of our customers try to go through resolving all their skipped records, right? But there are many skipped records that might not be mission critical to be dealing with. So instead, you can employ the rules engine and actually create rules to try and make that process a little bit easier. So we really hope that you take the time to explore the rules engine if you haven't already, because it's been a big win for their customers that have already started using it. In addition to that, as far as Washington is concerned, I'm really, really proud of the work that our team did. Most of the Washington release was in two buckets. The first is engine improvements. We wanted to make sure that the process of the upgrade itself, once you click begin upgrade, is as smooth as possible. And that comes down to decreasing file load time. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but a lot of backend improvements went into the Washington release. And then in Xandu, we want to build upon that to try and do even more in the vein of database improvements. And we hope that you'll actually see a lot of benefit in terms of the time that quote unquote downtime where the scheduled jobs are paused. We want that to be as minimized as possible, especially for our largest customers. And then finally, Impact Tracker. One of the biggest things that many of our customers oftentimes talk about is, hey, I wait a few releases before, or wait a few patches before I take up an upgrade because patch 1 might not be the safest, Govind. And I fully hear you. I would feel much the same. I'm never the person that is the first to upgrade my OS on my iPhone, but we want to be in a world where you are safe and trust us enough that you're willing to do so. And Impact Tracker is going to be the first step in getting towards that future. And we can explain a little bit more about that in the next few slides as well. Thank you, Jonah, seeing the comment about the rules engine. Ideally, everybody else feels the same way, I think it's an amazing feature too. So let's talk a little bit more about those innovative investments, specifically in the backend space. So we're seeing a over 10% increase in file load time performance as a result of the improvements we made to the engine as a result of the Washington work. So there's a few different things we're doing underneath the hood there. I won't get into the super technical details, but we're doing a lot of file loading optimization, but also a lot of memory optimization as well. So hopefully that will result in many of our largest customers seeing a large increase in the time saved as a result of the work we've done in Washington. In addition to that, we also understand that table alters are a really big deal for many of our customers, and that sometimes it can take up to 60% of the upgrade time, depending on how you are as a customer. So we are working very hard in Xanadu to build off that work that we did in Washington to try and make the backend work as easy and smooth as possible for our customers. We understand that many of our smaller and medium-sized customers might not see this as big of an issue, which is why we're working on other things in parallel as well. But the hope here is that any of the quote unquote downtime that you're experiencing is going to be as minimized as possible in Washington and beyond. Any questions about any of this before I keep hopping forward?
Govind, we did have a couple of questions.
Sure, yeah. Hit me.
Come through. If you want to pop in to the Q&A, you'll see the same thing.
Sure.
And some of these we'll take at the end to come through. But just to clarify, that's in here. I know you talked about a little bit about what comes through, but when do you recommend starting to upgrade to a new release?
The honest answer is as soon as possible. That is as what we'd love. I think right now many of our customers are looking at patch 4 or so of when they feel most ready to be upgrading. But a lot of the work our team is doing right now is to try and make sure that code quality is as high as possible so that people can feel safe upgrading even at patch 2 or patch 3.
And I would say I would actually want to start at EA. I'd want to go grab the PDI as soon as possible. I know we saw learning coming up a lot in the chat, and I think it's the sooner you start your upgrade, the sooner it's going to be, and the sooner your things are going to be fixed if there are issues or enhancements that come through. So EA is there for a reason. I'm not going to go to production on my EA instance, but I'm going to go get my PDI, kick the tires, and really as soon as GA, I want to get that on my sub prod and run through my automated testing. And I think part of it has to do with your organization on what you're going to do. And there's a question about ATF, and I'm going to plug that at the end. So I won't steal your time in here with the automated testing. But if I get it on EA, I get it on GA, and I'm starting and I'm looking at it, I can run my tests and have a good idea of not only what is everything work or not, but there's different, right? We make it better all the time, and there's differences, and you need to figure that out when you're looking at what's available and what you want to have, and if there's any OCM you need to do and get people trained, make sure it works. You're going to be able to upgrade sooner. If you wait until the end, maybe it doesn't work for you, right? It's your customization that has an issue with it, that there's something that you have, and then you're just gonna have to wait for that to be fixed with the case. So again, I wouldn't necessarily I'm going to go to prod the day after GA, but I want to have that plan. And the sooner you start, the better off it's going to be. The sooner you get all those great features. So,
yeah, no, Adam, I think I misunderstood.
That was my soapbox.
I 100% agree with you. I think you want to be planning as quickly as possible, play around in sandboxes, get your PDI working. I think you want to be testing our stuff and make sure it works for you. And the sooner you do that, the better.
And also related to question for the duration.
Yeah.
We talked about time, how long it takes to upgrade. Do you have any references for how many FTEs are assigned to it or working on the upgrade?
Yeah, very much differs from company to company. So the numbers that I presented are averages from our own data that we've taken in. I don't have that same averages around how many FTEs, because that's not something a customer has to report when they're pursuing an upgrade, in the same way that we have that data around the time that is taking at each stage of the upgrade. From my own conversations, it seems like teams are ranging from anywhere from 3 people to 50 people. So I think there's a huge range depending on how large the company is.
It is, and I find it interesting. I think it scales pretty well because we hit that time period pretty consistently. And for what it's worth, the customers seem to put the resources in to get it into that time frame. And it has to do much more with how much you've customized, definitely how much you've customized, how many different product lines you have. If all you have is ITSM, fine. But if you have ITSM and CSM and HR and App Engine, you're building all this stuff, you have more resources that are in there. So there's not a perfect number. There's not I don't think there's a perfect number how to go. You definitely need to have this. All right. And oops. With hot fixes, do you have any, as we're going through testing, do you have any recommendation about taking hot fixes? So I'm testing patch 3. We're going through, we have UAT, we're 4 weeks in. And there's a hot fix that's available. Should I take that hot fix?
I'd actually default to you there. I think you might have better insight there.
I would say my response would be, do you need it? We list everything that's in that chain, those hot fixes. Our policy at ServiceNow is generally we don't want to add new features and new functionality into patches at all. It's about fixing and securing. Hot fixes, it's even more. That hot fix fixes one specific thing. If you don't need it, I probably wouldn't do it. Security, I'm probably always going to take. But if it's fixing that hot fix might be fixing something in an app you don't have, so don't worry about it, right? So make sure you're really, really critical, thoughtful about hot fixes. For the minor release that comes through, or quarterly or a patch that comes through, I want to take my quarterly patches. It's got lots of good stuff. It's my vitamins. It's good for everybody. You definitely want to stay in your quarterly patching. But the hot fixes that come through, if it's late in the cycle, really take a look at, do you need it or not? It's probably not going to hurt anything if you don't need it, because it's a similar area. And if you do, go ahead and take it. But we're not throwing in major functionality to a hotfix, right? It's very, very targeted when we have that. All right. I'll hand it back over to you, and I'll continue to monitor the Q&A and then interrupt.
No worries at all. And I think we'll dive into a lot of these Q&A questions at the end as well. So from there, I want to talk a little bit about the Impact Tracker initiative as well. And I apologize if any of these slides seem a little bit too text heavy. They're from a completely separate deck that I entirely stole them from for this conversation. So I'll talk through them. I'll give you the highlights. No need to read word for word exactly what's here. But the takeaway is we are fully acknowledging of the fact that many of our customers have extremely customized instances, and we love that. But it results in a lot of issues at time of upgrade, especially so when we look at ServiceNow. ServiceNow is also trying to push a lot of new stuff, which oftentimes might conflict with your customizations. So we want to try and make sure that us as a company are still prioritizing our customers and making sure that they can customize as much as they want, but making sure that we're breaking less stuff when we allow them to do so. So we'll dive a little bit more into what exactly that means. So ServiceNow are oftentimes creating merge conflicts with you, the customer, because we're altering files that customers have already customized. But it goes both ways as well. Customers are oftentimes customizing files that ServiceNow is prone to change too. So we want to ideally make sure that that sort of like tug of war of sorts is as minimized as possible. And there's two ways we can do that, right? We can either alert ServiceNow to say, hey, maybe let's not touch this thing because customers have built a ton of customizations atop it. And if you really do need to build atop this thing, maybe we create a new file instead. And then from a customer point of view, we alert all of you to let you know that, hey, this is something that we've changed in every one of our past releases. And odds are we've got warning that we're probably going to change this again in Xanadu or again in Yokohama. So maybe you don't want to be building a customization here because it's just going to cause a skipped record for you in the future as well. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring down that skipped record count. We're trying to make sure that you're running into fewer issues at time of upgrade, and that merge conflict, that person you might have on your team whose entire job is just to deal with merge conflicts, their life's becoming easier too. So what we're doing is internally, we're creating an upgrade friction dashboard. We're calling that as a project initiative, the Impact Tracker. And what Impact Tracker is trying to do is we're trying to look at every place where we're causing skipped records for our customers, track the total count of skipped records, but then also track which teams are creating the most skipped records so that we can see that, okay, this Scrum team is responsible for every single customer across the farm getting a skipped record. Let's figure out exactly why that is. Is it breaking customizations? Let's talk a little bit more with that team. And then if they realize it's something that is still mission critical and everybody needs to be making sure that they don't have customizations atop that stuff, we'll then convey that to you downstream as a customer. But ideally, we want to be having those conversations earlier with our own engineers and letting them know, hey, we no longer want this to be a headache for our customers. Let's try to make the upgrade process as frictionless as possible. So this is what our dashboard is internally. We have a lot of different ways that we can break down this data too. And we now have an entire team as well whose job is going to be monitoring this dashboard and making sure that we're breaking as few things as possible too. Now, how does that manifest from an actual customer and developer point of view too? For our customers, or rather for our developers on this slide, we're going to be servicing how many, how like high friction or low friction a file might be on the actual file that they're working on. So this is one view you see in build tools, which is what our internal system is called. But then you're also going to see this if you're actually building on like an IDE or some sort of like code development software. We're also going to be alerting you to that as well. And what we're going to be saying is like, hey, this is customized by oh so many instances. Maybe you don't want to be making this change. And if they still go about making that change, they'll then alert things to my team, and we'll then go talk with them and figure out a little bit more why they're editing high risk files. And our goal here is that only the most important of files are touched moving forward, and that anything else that you have built a customization on, we're ideally trying to make sure that there's breaking as few things as possible. Yeah. Adam, I see you hopping off mute.
I want to chime in because I was having a conversation with one of my team this morning. And to be clear too, one of the reasons that this works and is important has to do with how you upgrade and how you build, how you customize and configure. And this has changed over time. One of the things we used to say was make a copy. We haven't said that for a while now, and we actually want to not make copies of things that we're configuring, because this doesn't work if you make a copy and you inactivate, right, or come through. And there's certainly some art to it about if I'm enhancing and I'm adding stuff. Yeah, go ahead and add a new, I don't need to go modify a script include if I'm just adding some new functions, right? I don't want to go modify an out of the box flow that I'm not going to call anyway. If I'm adding an action, if I'm adding a flow action, I'm just going to add an action. I don't need to use the out of the box one. I don't want to reuse it. Script include, if I'm adding a method, I'm probably not going to add a method to an out of the box script include. I'll add a new script include and call that. But again, you don't want to copy, you want to modify. We actually want to be really head on to go, I am configuring this. I'm customizing this. I'm changing this business rule. I'm changing this ACL. If you just add new ACLs, we can't see that. And again, if I'm adding a new role and I'm expanding what it can do, new is fine. New is good for new. But if you're changing, don't make it look new. You can modify it, right? And so that way we're all really clear on the skips. I think one of the things that worries me the most is that I've added new functionality. Maybe I inactivated it, so it doesn't show up as a skip, but it works differently and it causes me a problem, right? Does that make sense? It's important as you build every day, every deployment you make, every update set you deploy, every app repo you come through, you're making your upgrade harder or easier, right? Or keeping it the same. But you definitely have a chance to make it harder. And if we hide everything, we insulate everything, that's where we cause all the friction in upgrades, or we cause a lot of the friction in upgrades, because the skips didn't show up. We don't know you're customizing it, but it breaks what you have. But if you configure and or if you change what's out of the box, we can see it, we can handle it, we can talk about it, we can have these great conversations. So just again, as you're thinking about it, as you're building, we don't want to just copy and ignore, because that's what bites us in the past, right? That's setting up those issues. We want to be very upfront about it. I'm changing out of the box behavior and we see this. Okay, sorry.
That's an amazing call out, Adam, and something that I think everybody would benefit from knowing, especially now that we've changed the way we're tracking it on our side. So from there, from a customer point of view, this is what you're going to see now. As far as this is a higher priority file type, we're going to recommend that you don't pursue changing this if possible, but if it's mission critical for your business use case, feel free to continue doing so. Just expect a skipped record at time of upgrade. Now, to peel back the curtain a little bit and how we're building upon this in Xandu, what we're thinking about doing and what we've rather begun work in the vein of is pairing up with the automated test framework team, where our goal is that for any issues that might arise, you're catching them early enough in sub-prod instead of catching them in prod. So what we're going to try and get everybody to do is that if you still pursue customizing high risk areas that ServiceNow is prone to change in the future, you try to either manually test it or use our ATF framework as well to make sure that you have tests around that. And the ideal case there is that the test will run at time of the sub production upgrade. And what you'll realize is that you're catching those issues in sub prod instead of finding a defect in prod. And what we're going to be further building upon that in either Zandu or Yokohama, I need to double check with my engineering team to see where we're at, is a upgrade risk score, which is going to take as an input all of this data from the impact tracker, but then also all the data that's coming through your testing and trying to figure out exactly how risky is your upgrade to pursue right now, and whether or not we'd recommend that you either deprecate certain tech debt or you try to build tests around certain customizations that are currently untested. So a lot of work right there as far as customer validation still needed, but wanted to peel back that curtain for all the lucky people here on the call to make sure that you understand that we're trying to do our best to try and help from a testing point of view too. And I think that's really, really important as we move forward. Finally, this is the last slide I have here. I want to give a little bit of a plug for the work that our team's doing, just because I know that many of my engineers will listen to this too. Conrad, very nice customer who talks to me. Hopefully, I think all of you can be similar people as well who are in my ear if you email me at the email previously. But he told me that his upgrade was the most successful one to date when he was moving up to Vancouver. Yet to talk to him about Washington, but hoping that'll be much the same there too. And hopefully that means that all of you can take interest in trying to pursue those upgrades as well. And I hope they go off without a hitch. And if they don't, you have my email, and I'm happy to hear everything about everything we can do better in the future too. So with that, Adam, I'm happy to pass it back to you, and we can talk about any questions that people may have.
Great. Okay, so let's get to some of the questions. There are lots of good stuff in here. Yes. Okay. This is one I'm going to take it to come through. It's my area, but it's a great question. Can ServiceNow documentation be more explicit about letting us know what's out of the box or what comes with a potential fee? Because it's not clear. Yes, we definitely can do that. I will say there's a little bit of nuance in there because there's variance in contracts, and some contracts, some SKUs will include some feature and some don't. We're trying to be much more thoughtful about that. And basically, if it says it's in the platform, it's included. If it's not, it's not. Also, way more transparent in Application Manager. I'll put the plug in too. One of my favorite enhancements in Washington is that in the admin center, I can just go straight to the Application Manager, and I don't have to go system applications, all the Application Manager. We're putting a lot of effort into explaining and being clearer about entitlements, so that when I go to the Application Manager, it'll say I have a license or I don't. That's something we should be able to answer for you and communicate out. If you don't have a license, that's a lot less clear, and that's where you need to talk to your account rep about how you can get it in a way that makes sense for you. There are some different restrictions between different regions in the world and different governments on how we have to sell it. So there's not like you have to buy this, but definitely in the documentation, we want to be clear that you need some type of license or not. We can do that. And the real answer will be in the Application Manager about, am I licensed or not? And we're balancing not showing you stuff you don't have, but also telling you about stuff that would make your life a lot easier in that. But if in doubt today, just talk to your account team. They'll be able to get the answer for you. But we're going to be pushing really hard to make sure that is in the instance for you to see. My understanding from what everybody I've talked to is the people who read the contract and the people who activate the applications and the plugins are not the same people. I know that sometimes they are, but just we want to make sure that as somebody who's doing the upgrade, who's being asked to activate something, that you have that at tip of your fingerprints, tip of your fingers to be able to do that. Okay. There were a couple questions in here about rollbacks, and I think that has to do with rollback. I'm going to take that as uninstalling some of the plugin stuff for plugins and for apps. Do you have any insight into our thoughts on that and how we're positioning uninstalling something?
That is something I'd say talk a little bit more with your account team about that. I don't have a ton of thought around the uninstalling idea. I know we're trying to minimize rollbacks. I've been looking at a lot of rollback data there, but as far as best practices are concerned, I think that would go under some of the other teams.
And I'll put it in terms of uninstalls, or we should be pretty clear about this. We're trying to move as much as we can to the store. Most store app, not all, but most store apps are uninstallable. Much more than plugins, right? Plugins are not unactivatable. Once you've turned it on, you've turned it on. But there's some reason for that. When we're modifying a bunch of global stuff, you can't really undo it in a way that makes sense without causing lots of other issues. So generally with plugins, we fix forward. But with store apps, it will warn you if you can't uninstall it. Some of the store apps are I'm going to say uninstallable. That doesn't sound really great. Are not uninstallable, but are a lot of what we are doing is put it into the store, design it in a way that it is uninstallable, so that if there is an issue or there's a new version or whatever wants to come in, that you have that power. It's not always possible, but that's certainly something that we take a look at. Govind, do you have any insight about 2 major releases a year?
Yeah,
So
why do we do it? I think the first answer is that it's been the way that we've done it from a legacy standpoint. So it's hard to really break tradition there. But I know that's a lot of thinking that my team's going around right now to see, is that the right way to go about it? Because I think, anonymous attendee, you highlight a very, very good point there, that for a lot of our smaller customers, it's a lot to take on, a lot to test. And by the time you finish that process, there's already a next release ready for you. So we're right now exploring the idea of trying to shift more so towards the store, have a lot of that functionality that would traditionally be in a family release available in the store. And you can pick and choose which parts of the family release you'd like to have, similar to like an Apple App Store model, if you will. Now, we're very, very far away from actually implementing anything of that sort. That's something we're still validating. And if you have any thoughts on that, I'd recommend reaching out to me via email, and we're happy to talk a little bit more about that one-on-one.
And that relates back to the next question about app upgrades specifically, and that they're possibly released monthly. I mean, to clarify, so we do 2 family releases a year, and then we do quarterly store releases of new functionality. The quarterly for new functionality, but we do patch releases every month in the store to come through. Partner apps that are not from ServiceNow, I believe, are actually released weekly. We don't really control when they release it, but for ServiceNow apps, which, as Govind said, we're pushing much more into the store to give you more choice and more flexibility. Those are patched monthly, released quarterly. And I'll say, originally we did store releases monthly, and it was too much. So there's a double-edged sword here, and I think our philosophy goes to, we want to give you the choice. We want to give you the choice to do it on how you want to have. I like to, again, we said earlier we had about the express upgrades. I think when it came through with the store, as an important reminder or note to come through, you might hear us say it there, and I think we need to document this a little bit more, about true ups, which is we take almost everything that's in the store from ServiceNow and we put it into the family release. So as you're upgrading the family twice a year, you're getting the store releases that were ready to go when we made the family. So when you're upgrading to Washington if I'm upgrading to Washington right now, I'm getting most of the store apps that were available when we built Washington, which would have been in November, not what came out in February. So our store releases are February, May, August, November for our major releases. It's getting the stuff. It doesn't get the latest one because we're actually at EA. We do EA and store release at the same time. It's the stuff before that. So you're going to get all that functionality twice a year. And as we make it faster and simpler, we'll be able to deploy faster, but we can't deploy faster until we make it faster and simpler, right? Govind's got to succeed before we can really go, hey, we're going to give you, 6 releases a year. It's too, when I talk to customers, it's too much, right? I can't give you something where you literally never stop upgrading. And that's well, until we get to a point where we can never stop upgrading and it's easy, right? And it's just flowing, but I can't ask you to have dedicated resources that just do ServiceNow upgrades all the time. Nothing but that. I don't feel comfortable asking you to do that. So the store release does give you the options to patch that stuff and get new functionality sooner, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And if you have a one app, maybe you can do it. But for some of our customers that have everything we sell, it's so much to manage that we need to give you some checkpoints where things come in. And we need more flexibility. We need more transparency. We need to be easier, but we also don't want to just dump everything on you and tell you good luck, right? We want to make sure that you have all the tooling and support to be very successful.
Totally. And Adam, in that vein, I just want to speak to Mark's question in the chat saying that customers already don't stay current with the store apps. Are we not just shifting the problem? And I want everybody here on this call to keep me honest. And again, message me at my email with your thoughts here. But what I've heard from some customers is that the family release is a little bit too overwhelming. So because of all the time that it takes to go through every part of the release notes, do testing around every part of your customizations, and even sometimes testing the new stuff that ServiceNow is pushing as well, people skip family releases because it's a little bit too much to handle. So our whole thinking about exploring this other idea is that why don't we try to make family releases as lightweight as possible? Instead, people can pick and choose what they would like to test in the store. And if that ends up not being something that the people here on this call find valuable, then we can move in a different direction. Just want to be operating and be candid around why we're thinking through that right now.
Sorry, reading all these great questions to come through, and that we only have a few more minutes to. I will go as hopefully we'll get some answers in the chat to that. As we go through, I think that I think one of the things will come through is there's not one size fits all, and so it's really important to email Govind. He wants to read all of your emails, and we'll follow up and have some more conversations about what makes sense for you. And I think we want to become more prescriptive. I know we want to become more prescriptive on how you can on different plans that you can choose and what makes sense for your organization. Some organizations can only upgrade once a year. It has nothing to do with ServiceNow. That's their OCM. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure that we don't forget is that upgrading is more than the technical upgrade, right? So there's testing. So I might want just this new app. I might want this fix for this app. Great. We want to have that flexibility. But there's other organizations where we have to do a lot of there's a lot of regulatory issues that we have to handle. And that way outside of what we're able to do right now, right? We want to know about it. If you have regulatory issues, you have things you have to file. Like, we want to understand all of that. Govind had the slide at the beginning about this is the upgrade process, which my hands don't fit on the screen. We want to make sure we know that and understand it and help address that as much as we can. But it's because of the OCM and the changes that come with that and how I enable my organization. We want to give you the control to say, I want to do my CSM team now, and then we do my HR team next, and then we do that. Like, you want to rotate. Others just need to do a big bang because I have this window that I can do an upgrade for all of my systems. There is not a one size fits all, a best for everybody. But as we talk to you and what your needs are, maybe we can help craft a best for you, and reuse some of the models that we have. I am going to steal the screen.
Go for it.
Hopefully. And okay. So need some help with some resources. I do have a few more things that I wanted to end with this on. So one, how do I know what's in Washington? Reading the release notes. The release notes are great if you have a real question. If you have not used the upgrade kit, it is awesome. These go back at least to San Diego. I think before that, I put up some links for Vancouver and for Washington. The Washington's out. These generally come out on the day of GA to come through. So there'll be a Xanadu one in September. So it's not ready for EA, but for GA, it's there. Washington is there. This is, I was going to bring it up, but I think it's a 200-point PowerPoint deck. And the link actually didn't work in Washington, but I'll follow up on that. For you to get this deck, it is a great overview, pictures, description of the value of all of the new enhancements that came out in Washington. And again, we have that for Vancouver and the previous releases as well, depending on where you're at. Great content for you to see. If you're here, you definitely need to look at this. But take the PowerPoints deck and use it internally. Change the slide master and make it look like yours. That's what it's for. But it helps you communicate out to your internal teams what the value of Washington is and Vancouver and before. Awesome resource. Make sure you are using this. Again, those links down at the bottom will get you there. You can find it on servicenow.com as well through a couple of clicks. But if you want to get there, it'll take you there. It's a PDF and it has that link on here to get the PowerPoint. And I'll follow up about why the PowerPoint's not working for Washington. Next, impact customers. If you're here and you're getting started with upgrades, Impact has an offering for you about jumpstarting your upgrade. Great resources to come in. You're here, you're watching this and participating and getting to ask questions live, but we can't talk about your specific instance. If you're watching this on YouTube, we can't answer your questions live. But for our Impact customers, great offering to help you through it. I highly recommend doing this, particularly if you're early in your journey in ServiceNow and you haven't done a lot of these yet. To come through, you'll spend a couple hours with an expert looking through your instance, talking about upgrade strategies that fit for you. I keep saying it's not a one size fits all. This is a great opportunity to get some knowledgeable experts to help you find what works for your organization. So that's available with Impact. Related to that as well is Jumpstart Your Automated Testing. If you are not using ATF, we did a session on that a month ago. Yinka, who was on, I don't know if he's been answering some questions as well, was talking about ATF and the automated testing and how that helps your upgrades as well. We didn't talk a lot about that today, but you really want to make sure you understand ATF. If you have not been using ATF, go check out this accelerator with Impact. The webinar, it's posted in YouTube. We'll put a link to it at the bottom of this one. We post this as well. Yinka was talking about all the great stuff that's available with ATF, whether it is the test generator, Cloud Runner to help you run your tests all the time. In Washington, we have a new performance testing tool. Great stuff with ATF. This ATF will help you reduce your time. We see it in our stats. We talk to customers. When you're using ATF, you will reduce the amount of time it takes to have an upgrade, and you'll have better quality, smoother, easier upgrades. So if you're just getting started, check out Impact. And then we're back on the Q&A. And let's see if there's anything else in here. When is the Impact Tracker going to be available, Govind?
Impact Tracker should be live for our Washington customers, and then the updated Impact Tracker should be live in Xanadu. So all the stuff I was sharing about the ATF related work will later.
And is that the Impact Tracker? Will it help me in my Washington upgrade, or will it need to be really my next?
It'll really be your Washington Xanadu upgrade, I think.
Okay, and patches should help too, right?
And patches, yes.
And patches, right? So today it's there. Like, I hope you get excited to go take a look at it, and particularly as we're going to go through a couple patches in Washington. Start there, and then when you get to Xanadu, you'll be an expert. Okay. A question about Health Scan to help you out. I definitely love Health Scan. This is saying about it not going away. I don't expect Health Scan to go away, although it might be replaced with Impact with Instant Scan and Platform. But the concept of what Health Scan does, I have not heard about it going away at all. It's really essential. I am a big advocate of we need more of it, and I want it in instance. I want it to be easier, all that stuff. But I haven't heard of it being pulled. And then ATF, speed of ATF is definitely being worked on. Check out the session from last month if you haven't done that. But we're doing a lot in ATF to make it better, easier, all of that great stuff. Just as Govind is focusing on the upgrades, we have a team focusing on ATF and that whole experience for us. For PA, I'll get back to the PA content pack stuff with that. Okay, let me get the last slide so we can wrap up for this. We'll try and get to other questions, but we are over time, I think, already. If you have other questions, we have lots of academies that are going on. So this is our Platform Academy, Platform Fundamentals Academy. We have an academy focused exclusively on workflow automation with Workflow Studio, Flow Designer, process playbooks, Action Designer, decisions, great stuff in workflows, analytics, everything. There is a lot happening in analytics with Platform Analytics. So check out those series. Specifically with a migration, it's very related to upgrades. If we had more time, I'd talk about how upgrades are going to impact your analytics, but make sure you go check out those sessions. They're all recorded on YouTube, mobile, next experience, AI. I don't know, people like to talk about AI nowadays. Amazing content out there and what we can do with Now Assist, and then conversational interface academy. So if I want to know about virtual agent, lots of great content out there. You're certainly invited to come join us live and ask your questions. And if not, it's all available on YouTube shortly after the session. And with that, I wanted to thank you for joining us. Here's Govind's email, not mine. I changed that. So you have that. So Govind wants to hear from you. We all want to hear from you. But let us know about your upgrade experience, and we'd love to set up some time to talk to you and find out what will make upgrades easier and smoother for you. And the more you get to talk to us, the more it's going to impact and be better for you. Without anything you want to add, Govind? Otherwise, I think we're going to have to wrap up for today.
Been wonderful spending time with all of you. Hopefully looking forward to many emails.
Great. And this will be recorded, posted into YouTube probably early next week. So you can forward it to your family, friends, get it to go. Memorial Day is coming up. You can do that. And I will be remiss to tell you too, Knowledge is coming up in just a few weeks, super early to come through for all of us here. Govind, are you going to be at Knowledge?
I will be at Knowledge.
And he will be at the Upgrades booth. So if you're going to be at Knowledge, come talk to Govind live. You can send him an email, but I would just surprise him. Just show up and start talking.
I'm much shorter in person, so that might be a little bit surprising. I know I seem large on camera, but expect a 5'8" man at best.
Yes, many people at ServiceNow are super tall when you see them. You find that at Knowledge. Not Govind and me. We are on the shorter side. But come see us. We'll be at the Platform booth. We have some sessions going on. We're doing some roundtables talking about upgrades. The two of us will be there. A couple other experts to come as well. So if you're here, there's some great resources for you at Knowledge to be. So we hope to see you there. And with that, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you again in a month. Have a great day.